Hi there, it's time for geometry. Welcome to video number 37. This is called CPCTC. That stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, so many times we have to prove triangles are congruent, and then there's one more step. We'll conclude that some of their parts are congruent. Okay, so let's start with our first example here. Here we have two triangles, and we can tell they're congruent by side, angle, side. They have a pair of matching sides here, pair of matching angles, another pair of matching sides. So our first question is, how do we know that the triangles are congruent? Well, side, angle, side. So I'm kind of write out, we're given everything in this problem. So we know that FC is congruent to, that would be DT. And we got angle C and angle T. So we got angle C is congruent to angle T. And we also know that we have AC, segment AC, is congruent to, well, that would be segment ST. Now, we're not proving this is actually all given. We're given enough information to conclude that the triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. So it's not a formal proof. We're just saying why they're congruent. And all of it was given. So now we know that triangles are congruent. The point is that if we know two triangles are congruent, all their corresponding parts are congruent. So even though I started off by knowing only three matching parts were congruent, because the triangles are congruent, all their matching parts are congruent. So now we can go ahead and conclude that, for instance, angle F up here is going to be congruent to angle D. We didn't know that before, but because now we know the triangles are congruent, we know that those angles are congruent. We knew that angle. We know that angle A is congruent to angle S, so we know these two are congruent now. We didn't know that before. And we also know that side FA is congruent to DS. We didn't know that before either. So there's three things now that we know. So FA is congruent to SD. Okay, so the first three things we knew and were given were enough to conclude that the triangles are congruent. That means everything in them matches. Okay, so we found three things we didn't know. Here we go. Here's another little example for us. So the first question again is, why can we conclude these two triangles are congruent? Well, I have two pairs of matching sides. Those two match, these two match, and also they share this side. Okay, so we know that DG and DS are congruent. Like I said, this is not a two-column proof, just kind of stating why. GO and SO, both of those were given. And then now we have DO is congruent to itself. Remember, that's called the reflexive property. It's a property of congruence, that everything is congruent to itself. It's not really a property of triangles, it's a property of congruence. Okay, all that together means that because of side, 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 we can conclude those triangles are congruent. Now, we don't know, we originally didn't know anything about any of the angles. But now, because the triangles are congruent, we know that all those angles are congruent also. So angle G, we now know is congruent to angle S. And angle GDO, which was this angle right here, is congruent to SDO. And in fact, there's one more thing we know. We know that these two angles over here are congruent. So GOD is congruent to SOD. Why? All of that is because of CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. In fact, that's the main theme of today. This is our next step in proofs. But sometimes we have to go beyond proving two triangles are congruent. And we'll see why. I'm going to show you many reasons why. Alright, so here is the main idea for today. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. You can abbreviate it as CPCTC, so you don't have to write all that out. So here's a nice abbreviation for that. Okay, we're going to do a proof that requires this. So it is time to get serious here. We're making some progress in proving things. So we want to show that angle W is congruent to angle Z. There's no way we can tell that right now. What we have to do is show that the triangle on the left is congruent to the triangle on the right, and then we can conclude that those two angles are congruent by CPTC. Man, it's hard for me to say. Here we go. So we're going to go ahead and prove these are congruent. We can write these two the givens in one line. So we're given that WO is congruent to ZO. So WO and ZO are congruent. Those are those sides. And we're also given that XO is congruent to YO. So these guys down here. Now, you should see this coming already. These angles are vertical, and this is going to be side, angle, side. So we have angle WOX is congruent to angle ZOY. Okay, and that was because vertical angles are congruent. Okay, and the first step was because of given. The first line, all that was given. Okay, actually we have enough for side, angle, side. So we can conclude that those triangles are congruent. Triangle WOX is congruent to triangle ZOY. And why is that? SAS. Now before, we were kind of done, because our goal was always to prove triangles congruent. But we're taking it a step further. Our goal was to show that angle W is congruent to angle Z. But now, because we know these triangles are congruent, all their matching parts are congruent, we know that angle W is congruent to angle Z as well. Here it is. CPCTC. Done. Super. So it's really just one more step. So we had to prove the triangles congruent. Then we could get that the matching parts we wanted are congruent. All right, here's one more example. Got our buddy Euclid in on this. So he was the first person, a Greek, who started systematically organizing geometry. Actually, he started with some basic principles and proved many of the things we know about geometry. So that's why he's famous, for making math very systematic. Okay, so all right, we'll try to make him proud here. So we're given that M is the midpoint of A and B. So I'm going to kind of mark what I know. That means that this segment and that segment, we can conclude that those are congruent. And we know that angle 1, we're given that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Oh, these are reflections of each other. And angle 3, congruent to angle 4. I see angle, side, angle. That's the way this is going to go. So we can establish these two triangles are congruent, and then we can conclude what they want us to conclude. They want us to show that this left side is congruent to that right side. So we'll prove the triangle is congruent, and then we'll use CPCTC. So the first step is M is the midpoint. I'm going to abbreviate of AB. Why? Given. Best reason ever. And then we have two others. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. That's given. Now, I've stated two of the congruences right there. They were given. The third congruence is what we marked here, that AM is congruent to BM. We got to say that. So AM is congruent to BM. That's the third matching part. And that is definition of a midpoint. Because M is the midpoint, it divides into two equal segments. That's why we know those are equal or congruent. Okay, definition of midpoint. Now, we got our side, our angle, side, angle. So we can say triangle ACM is congruent to triangle BCM. Why? Angle, side, angle. Okay, now we can finally conclude what they wanted us to conclude, that this side here is congruent to that side there. So AC now we know is congruent to BD because every matching part in those triangles is congruent. So that is CPCTC. All right, cool. So we'll practice this in class. And this was just a little introduction here. And time for the journal assignment. Okay, so good news for the journal assignment is you don't have to come up with a whole proof by yourself. You just have to supply the reasons. So take a good look at the figure and kind of understand the flow of the proof. We want to show that angle A and B are congruent. They look congruent, but that's not enough to conclude they're congruent. We have to conclude they're congruent based on the information we're given. So we have to show these two triangles are congruent, and then using CPCTC, we know that the angles are congruent. So see if you can come up with the 6 reasons for this. I think you can, no problem. All right, we'll see you in class.